Okay, good morning, Doug. This is Diane again. Yeah, I'm getting a red deal going on here and moving back and forth. But you could still see my real face. Anyway, Doug, I wanted to say a little bit more about the whole thing with the WTC. One of the most interesting things that I studied in regard to it was the flaming cars that were in the parking lot, I guess a couple of blocks away. And there were spontaneous fires. Parts of the cars were burned, but parts of them weren't burned. And the reason it was so fascinating for me is I had never encountered that type of damage where the door handles could be melted, but yet the rest of the car could be intact. But one of the most fascinating parts of it was something called the rustification. And apparently all the cars in that lot rusted within 2 days. And it was like almost instantaneous. And there was a woman scientist that I was reading her explanation of this, and it has to do with physics, and I've never studied physics. It has to do with chemistry, and I haven't really studied that either. And it has to do with nuclear physics, which I've never studied that. But apparently it's something about this process where things sort of, somehow the atoms change and it just becomes something different. And it's part of a nuclear fission process, I suppose, from what I could gather. And the interesting thing to me was that this process is ongoing, that once it's triggered, it continues. And what that means to me, in terms of the people who live in that area, is that this process was ongoing, and it was recorded by satellite, these fires that they called molten steel, and they said it melted their boots. But that didn't make sense either, because if it melted their boots, it would have melted their feet too, but it didn't. So I think what it did was it softened their boots. There's some kind of ongoing reaction. It softened their boots. But another interesting thing was that the cleanup was done with water. They constantly sprayed water, and the way that they explained that was, well, we're putting out the fire, but there was no fire. There was heat spots, but the backhoe that they had put the front part of it right into the heat spot, and it didn't melt the backhoe. So it was some kind of like a glowing deal, but I don't think it was really heat. And some other things I read said that the levels of, I think it was titanium, the chemicals that were in the samples of the dust that they took were related to a nuclear fission event rather than anything else. And my concern, of course, is that the people find the kind of appropriate treatment that they need in the aftermath of this. And one of the things I've discovered is that in 1933 the Russians coated themselves with clay before they worked with nuclear parts or energy or reactors or radium or plutonium. They coated their bodies with a thin coat of clay, just regular clay that you get from the earth. And another interesting thing I read is that clay will absorb RLF rays, radiation waves. Whatever it throws off that's not good for us, it can absorb it. So one thing I've been doing is gathering up clay and putting it near my electronic devices. Another thing I do is I keep my devices unplugged if I'm not using them. And that way it kind of cuts down on the electricity in the house, and not only does it save me on my electricity bill and is it good for the environment, but also it's less electricity that my body has to deal with, because from my reading I've gathered that our bodies are electromagnetic, and so too much electricity can throw off our balance. So that's another reason that I try and walk a little bit every day. I try and stay outside for a while and neutralize the effect of all the electricity around me. Okay, well, Doug, keep up the great work, and thanks to everybody who contributed video. And again, you see, this is not a good video, but as you see, you cannot say I did not try. Okay, I'm going to sign off now. Have a great spirit-filled day, and bye-bye.